Seattle, the Cascadia Mega-Tsunami. The city of Seattle sits beautifully on the edge of the Puget Sound, surrounded by water and mountains. But just 50 miles off the coast lies the Cascadia Subduction Zone, a 600-mile fault line where the ocean floor is violently shoving itself underneath the North American tectonic plate. It has been locked tight for over 300 years, building unimaginable continental pressure. When it finally snaps, it will generate a magnitude 9.0 earthquake. The shaking will not last for a few seconds. It will last for a terrifying 5 to 7 minutes. The soft, waterlogged soil beneath Seattle's industrial district and the waterfront will instantly undergo seismic liquefaction, turning solid ground into soup. Unreinforced brick buildings in historic neighborhoods will shatter into dust. But the real doomsday arrives 15 minutes later. The displaced ocean floor will send a massive tsunami moving at 500 miles per hour toward the coast. A wall of water up to 100 feet high will obliterate coastal communities, wrap around the Olympic Peninsula, and funnel directly into the Puget Sound. The Seattle waterfront, massive shipping ports, and low-lying neighborhoods will be completely submerged under a violent, debris-filled tidal surge. The earthquake will shatter the city's bones. The ocean will arrive to wash away the pieces. Los Angeles, the San Andreas Firestorm. Los Angeles is an endless urban sprawl built entirely on a fractured, unstable crust. The San Andreas Fault is the most famous fault line in the world, and the southern section has not released its tension since 1857. Seismologists know the big one is not a theory, it is a mathematical certainty. When a magnitude 7.8 earthquake strikes, the ground will shake violently for up to 2 minutes. The modern skyscrapers in downtown LA are engineered to sway, but the city's true weakness is its sprawling lifelines. The California aqueducts that bring 70% of the city's drinking water cross directly over the fault lines. They will be instantly sheared in half. Thousands of pressurized natural gas pipelines buried under the streets will snap and spark. Within minutes, hundreds of fires will break out across the sprawling city. If this happens during the dry season, the infamous Santa Ana winds will fan the flames. With water mains completely destroyed, fire hydrants running dry, and highways cracked wide open, emergency crews will be paralyzed. The initial earthquake will bring Los Angeles to its knees, but the uncontrollable wind-driven firestorms that follow will turn the city into an inescapable furnace. Miami, the Limestone Siege. Miami is a gleaming metropolis built on borrowed time and porous limestone. The city sits barely above sea level, completely exposed to the warming, expanding Atlantic Ocean. The doomsday scenario here is not just a standard hurricane, it is the perfect geometric angle of a Category 5 storm making a direct hit. If a massive hurricane approaches from the southeast, the counterclockwise winds will act like a colossal plow, pushing the ocean directly into Biscayne Bay. This geographic funnel will create a storm surge exceeding 20 feet. But unlike other coastal cities that can protect themselves by building massive concrete seawalls, Miami cannot. The city sits on the Biscayne Aquifer, a sponge-like limestone foundation. The ocean doesn't just come over the walls, it bubbles up from beneath the ground, rising through the sewers, the drains, and the streets. The massive storm surge will swallow Miami Beach, flood the downtown high-rises up to the 3rd floor, and permanently contaminate the city's underground freshwater supply with heavy salt. The wind will destroy the roofs, but the salt water will drown the foundation, rendering the city permanently uninhabitable. New York City, the subway drowning. New York City is a fortress of steel and glass, the financial capital of the world. But geographically, it sits in a perilous trap. The Long Island Sound and the New Jersey coast meet at a 90-degree angle right at the mouth of New York Harbor. When a massive, slow-moving hurricane tracks perfectly up the coastline, this right angle acts as a geographic catcher's mitt, forcing millions of tons of ocean water straight into Manhattan. During Hurricane Sandy, we saw a terrifying preview of this nightmare. But a true doomsday storm will push a 15 to 20-foot wall of water into the city at high tide. The island of Manhattan will shrink as the rivers overflow. The ocean will violently pour into the subway system through the street grates, filling the century-old underground tunnels like bathtubs. Corrosive salt water will instantly short out the subterranean electrical grids, fiber optic internet cables, and critical pumping stations. New York's incredible vertical skyline relies entirely on its underground heart. Once the ocean floods the tunnels and stops the heart, the city of millions goes completely dark, paralyzed, and submerged. Las Vegas, the Deadpool Suffocation. Las Vegas is an artificial neon oasis in the middle of a brutal, unforgiving desert. Its existence relies almost entirely on one single source of water, the Colorado River, held back by the Hoover Dam and Lake Mead. For 2 decades, a catastrophic mega-drought has been slowly draining this massive reservoir. The Doomsday scenario for Las Vegas does not happen in a single day. It is a slow, agonizing suffocation, known by a terrifying engineering term, deadpool. If water levels drop just another 100 feet, the water will fall beneath the dam's lowest intake valves. No water will flow downstream. The massive hydroelectric turbines inside the Hoover Dam will spin down to zero, instantly cutting off a massive supply of electricity to the region. More terrifyingly, Las Vegas's own intake pipes will suck nothing but hot desert air. Without Lake Mead, the city's water supply vanishes overnight. 2 million residents and massive casino resorts will be left stranded in 115-degree heat with completely dry taps. Las Vegas won't be destroyed by a storm or an earthquake. It will simply be reclaimed by the desert it tried to conquer. New Orleans, the toxic overtopping. New Orleans is a city shaped like a bowl, sinking deeper into the earth every single year, completely surrounded by water on all sides. After the catastrophic failure of the levees during Hurricane Katrina, the city spent billions upgrading its flood defenses. But those walls are built for a 100-year storm, not a doomsday event. The ultimate nightmare is a Category 5 hurricane that stalls directly over the city, dumping 40 inches of rain while simultaneously pushing a 25-foot storm surge from the Gulf of Mexico up the Mississippi River. The surge will overtop the new seawalls. Because the entire city is below sea level, the water cannot drain naturally. The massive industrial pumping stations will be overwhelmed or lose power. The bowl will fill to the brim. But this is not just seawater. The floodwaters will mix with overwhelmed chemical plants along Cancer Alley, raw sewage systems, and ruptured fuel refineries. The city will not just flood, it will become a deep, stagnant, highly toxic lake, erasing centuries of history under 20 feet of poisonous, corrosive water. Houston, the petrochemical tsunami. Houston is a sprawling concrete jungle built on flat, marshy land notorious for ignoring zoning laws and paving over its natural drainage wetlands. During Hurricane Harvey, the city stalled under an atmospheric river that dropped 50 inches of rain. But the true doomsday scenario for Houston involves the Houston Ship Channel, home to one of the largest concentrations of oil refineries, chemical plants, and explosive storage facilities on the planet. If a massive Category 5 hurricane drives a 24-foot storm surge directly up the Galveston Bay funnel, it will obliterate the ship channel. Thousands of massive chemical storage tanks will be lifted and ripped from their foundations by the surging water. Millions of gallons of crude oil, highly toxic industrial chemicals like benzene, and explosive gases will spill directly into the floodwaters. A toxic tsunami will wash into the residential neighborhoods of the 4th largest city in America. The water will eventually recede into the Gulf, but the profound chemical contamination will turn the soil and groundwater into a permanent, lethal, hazardous waste zone. The Denver Supervolcano Burial. Denver is the mile-high city, safely insulated from coastal hurricanes, tsunamis, and major fault lines. But just 500 miles to the northwest lies the Yellowstone supervolcano. Beneath the national park is a reservoir of magma so massive it defies comprehension. An eruption of Yellowstone is a planetary-scale event, but Denver is in the direct, immediate kill zone of the fallout. When the supervolcano erupts, it will blast thousands of cubic miles of pulverized rock and volcanic glass into the stratosphere. The prevailing winds will carry this massive dark cloud directly over Colorado. The sky over Denver will turn pitch black at noon. Then the ash will fall. Volcanic ash is not like wood ash. It is heavy, jagged, pulverized rock that turns to cement when wet. Up to 3 feet of this dense material will blanket the city. The sheer weight will collapse the roofs of homes, shopping malls, and sports arenas. It will instantly clog car engines, short out the power grid, and turn the air into a lethal, suffocating hazard. Denver will not be burned by flowing lava. It will be buried alive under a mountain of gray snow that never melts. St. Louis, the new Madrid liquefaction. Most people associate earthquakes with the West Coast, but the most violent earthquakes in American history happened in the Midwest. St. Louis sits perilously close to the New Madrid seismic sound. In 1811, this fault produced a series of earthquakes so powerful they rang church bells in Boston and caused the Mississippi River to temporarily flow backward. St. Louis is a historic city filled with thousands of beautiful, unreinforced brick buildings that have never been retrofitted for severe seismic activity. Furthermore, much of the city and its critical infrastructure sits on the soft, waterlogged floodplains of the Mississippi River. When a magnitude 8.0 earthquake strikes the center of the North American plate, the shaking will last for minutes. The unreinforced brick will shatter into deadly shrapnel, collapsing entire neighborhoods. The wet soil beneath the highways and bridges will undergo extreme seismic liquefaction, turning solid ground into soup. The massive bridges crossing the Mississippi will collapse into the water, instantly severing the logistics and transportation spine of the entire United States. Chicago, the Meteotsunami. Chicago is safely tucked away on the shores of Lake Michigan, far from oceans and major fault lines. But massive lakes can produce a terrifying, invisible phenomenon known as a seiche, or a meteotsunami. When a line of severe, fast-moving thunderstorms, known as a derecho, pushes across Lake Michigan, the sudden extreme drop in atmospheric pressure and intense winds can push the lake water forward, creating a massive, unseen wave. Because the lake is an enclosed basin, this wave bounces off the eastern shore and rebounds directly toward Chicago with amplified force. In 1954, a 10-foot seiche wave hit Chicago out of nowhere, sweeping people off the piers under a perfectly clear sky. A true doomsday seiche could hurl a 15 to 20-foot wall of water directly into the downtown lakefront. It would overtop Lakeshore Drive and violently flood the subterranean levels of the city, rushing into underground parking garages, the lower levels of Wacker Drive, and the transit tunnels. It is a tsunami arriving without an earthquake, striking a city that never expects the water to rise. Salt Lake City, the toxic dust bowl. Salt Lake City was built in a beautiful valley next to the massive Great Salt Lake, but the lake is dying. Due to severe, prolonged drought and the aggressive diversion of rivers for agriculture, the Great Salt Lake is rapidly shrinking, exposing hundreds of square miles of dry lake bed. This is not just harmless mud. Over a century of mining runoff and agricultural chemicals have settled at the bottom of the lake. The newly exposed sediment is laced with high levels of arsenic, mercury, antimony, and lead. The doomsday scenario is a slow-moving ecological disaster. As the prevailing winds whip through the valley, they will pick up this toxic dust and carry it directly into Salt Lake City and the surrounding suburbs. The air will become a lethal, poisonous fog. It will strip the paint off cars and cause severe, long-term respiratory failure in the population. The towering mountains surrounding the city will act as walls, trapping the toxic smog inside the valley, creating a massive, unescapable poison bowl. San Francisco, the Hayward Fault Firestorm. Everyone knows about the San Andreas Fault, but the Hayward Fault is the true urban nightmare for the Bay Area. It runs directly beneath the most densely populated areas of the East Bay, cutting straight through hospitals, university stadiums, and thousands of homes in Oakland and Berkeley. When it ruptures with a 7.2 magnitude quake, the shaking will be violent, but the real doomsday is the immediate aftermath. The violent shifting of the Earth will sever the master water pipelines crossing the fault line. Simultaneously, thousands of natural gas lines will snap and spark. Just like the Great Quake of 1906, a massive firestorm will ignite. But this time, it will burn through the dense, dry hills of the East Bay, creating a localized fire tornado. Without water pressure to fight the flames, the fire will consume entire neighborhoods in minutes, leaping across 8-lane highways and creating an unstoppable wall of heat that pushes trapped residents straight toward the edge of the bay. The earthquake won't kill the city. The unstoppable dry brush inferno will. Washington, D.C. The Potomac storm surge. The nation's capital sits dangerously low on the banks of the Potomac River. It was originally built on a swamp, and nature is constantly trying to take it back. If a slow-moving Category 4 hurricane tracks directly up the Chesapeake Bay, the counterclockwise winds will push a massive wall of water directly up the Potomac Channel. The Doomsday scenario is a 15-foot storm surge arriving exactly at high tide, combined with massive inland rainfall flooding the river from the north. The water will easily breach the seawalls. It will flood the National Mall, pouring into the underground metro system and completely submerge the basements of federal buildings. Critical government infrastructure, including power grids, secure communication hubs, and classified subterranean data centers, will be completely submerged in corrosive, muddy saltwater. The capital of the free world won't fall to a military strike or a nuclear weapon. It will be paralyzed by a river that simply refused to stay in its banks. Boston, the polar vortex freeze. Boston is famous for its brutal winters, but it is entirely unprepared for a catastrophic stalled nor'easter combined with a severe polar vortex collapse. The Doomsday scenario hits when a massive winter cyclone stalls directly off the coast of Massachusetts, dumping 3 to 4 feet of heavy, wet snow, while hurricane-force winds batter the aging power grid. The extreme weight of the snow snaps thousands of power lines and transmission towers, plunging the entire metropolitan area into complete darkness. Then, the polar vortex drops the ambient temperature to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. Without electricity, millions of heating systems fail. The supply chains for heating oil freeze solid. Water pipes freeze and burst inside thousands of buildings, flooding homes with water that instantly turns to solid ice. The entire city becomes a frozen, impassable tomb, where simply staying inside your own apartment becomes a lethal, primitive battle against hypothermia.
Honolulu, the flank collapse Mega-Tsunami. Honolulu is an island paradise, but it is built on the sides of the largest, heaviest, and most active volcanoes on Earth. The Doomsday scenario for Honolulu doesn't come from a local eruption on Oahu. It comes from the Big Island. Geologists monitoring the Helena slump have found that the massive slopes of the Kilauea volcano are highly unstable and slowly sliding into the sea. If a massive earthquake triggers a catastrophic flank collapse, a chunk of the island the size of Manhattan will slide directly into the deep Pacific Ocean in a matter of seconds. This unimaginable displacement of water will instantly generate a mega-tsunami. A wall of water up to 300 feet high will race across the ocean, reaching Honolulu in under 45 minutes. The wave will completely wash over the densely packed high-rises of Waikiki Beach, shattering the hotels and sweeping the debris miles inland into the valleys. There will be no high ground left to run to and no time to evacuate an island. Portland, Oregon, the Oil Hub Liquefaction. Portland, Oregon prides itself on being a green, environmentally conscious city, but its critical infrastructure hides a massive, toxic secret. The Critical Energy Infrastructure Hub is a 6-mile stretch of aging fuel tanks holding over 300 million gallons of oil, gasoline, and highly hazardous chemicals. And it is built entirely on unstable liquefiable soil right on the banks of the Willamette River. When the Cascadia magnitude 9.0 earthquake strikes, the ground beneath these massive tanks will instantly turn to liquid soup. The tanks will rupture and collapse, spilling hundreds of millions of gallons of explosive fuel directly into the river and the surrounding city. The friction of the collapsing metal and snapping power lines will ignite the fuel, creating a catastrophic 6-mile-long river of fire burning on top of the water. The city will face a magnitude 9 earthquake, a massive toxic spill, and an uncontrollable inferno, all at the exact same moment. Atlanta, the inland canopy collapse. Atlanta is situated hundreds of miles inland, seemingly safe from the direct impact of hurricanes, but the doomsday scenario for the sprawling, heavily forested metropolis is a decaying Category 5 hurricane that refuses to lose its strength as it moves north from the Gulf. Atlanta is known as the city in a forest, with millions of massive old-growth oak and pine trees integrated directly into its neighborhoods. The extreme hurricane force winds, combined with torrential rain saturating the red clay soil, will cause hundreds of thousands of these massive trees to simultaneously uproot and crash down. They will crush homes, completely sever the city's above-ground power grid, and block every single major highway and residential street. The city will be entirely cut off from the outside world, paralyzed under a massive, impenetrable canopy of crushed timber and live electrical wires, with emergency services completely unable to move a single block. Dallas, the EF5 concrete grinder. Dallas, Texas sits squarely in the southern edge of Tornado Alley. While the city has seen its share of tornadoes, the true doomsday scenario is a massive multi-vortex EF5 tornado, a mile wide with winds exceeding 250 miles per hour, tracking directly through the densely packed downtown corridor. Modern skyscrapers are built to withstand straight-line hurricane winds, but they are absolutely not designed to survive the extreme rotational shear and explosive atmospheric pressure drops of an EF5 tornado. The tornado won't just break the glass. The extreme pressure vacuum will rip the glass curtain walls entirely off the steel skeletons of the high-rises. Thousands of tons of shattered glass, office furniture, and concrete will be sucked into the vortex and weaponized. The tornado will act like a massive, mile-wide grinder, turning the sprawling Dallas suburbs and the downtown business district into an unrecognizable field of pulverized, shredded debris in a matter of minutes. San Diego, the cliff collapse tsunami. San Diego is famous for its stunning coastal cliffs and beautiful, crowded beaches, but those towering cliffs are highly unstable, constantly undercut and eroded by the pounding Pacific Ocean. The doomsday scenario involves a massive, localized earthquake on the Rose Canyon fault line, which runs directly through the center of the city and offshore. A violent rupture will cause a catastrophic, simultaneous collapse of miles of coastal cliffs. Millions of tons of rock and earth will plummet into the ocean at once, displacing enough water to generate a highly localized, incredibly fast tsunami. Unlike a tsunami from Japan that takes 10 hours to cross the ocean, giving people time to evacuate, this wave will hit the crowded beaches of La Jolla and Mission Bay in less than 2 minutes. The steep cliffs that define the city's beauty will become an inescapable vertical trap, blocking any route for evacuation as the water violently surges inland.